The basics.
It really is. Oh, the uppercut, and he took it. Jake Paul took it.
Down to the body with the right hand for Anthony Joshua. There's a big left now.
Yeah.
I think he went into that fight knowing that was probably going to happen.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the big win for him would be that he was even willing to do it and that he could do well for a little bit.
Yeah.
The problem is he was like a famous kid and then no one took him seriously.
Yeah.
But
and then he started too with like more spectacle-ish.
Right to the midsection. With a right hand from Anthony Joshua. Here is a massive left now. Yes. But wait. Then we pivoted to fights that felt more like spectacles. Joe Rogan recently stepped up and exposed Jake Paul and Logan Paul for what many folks have been quietly suspecting for ages now. We are discussing choreographed bouts and the systematic dismantling of what boxing has stood for at its core.
I'm sorry to have to ask you this, but blink twice if that Jake Paul fight was set up.
Blink twice.
I know you probably
I
can't
don't
say
never
that.
blink because I got these liberty eyes. A lot of people wonder that, but think about this. If I say, Rampage, I'm going to pay you $2 million, right? Let this dude beat you. What you gonna...
Listen, the boundary between real competition and manufactured drama is getting so blurred, you can barely see it. What was once built entirely on risk, on genuine uncertainty, on real consequences that could end careers or change lives, now raises awkward questions about control and credibility that we can't just ignore. And here is the reality. If fights are starting to feel predictable to you, if you are watching and thinking, yeah, I sort of know how this will end, it is not your imagination. It is because the bedrock that made boxing real, that made it matter, is being quietly tested and pushed to its limits right before our eyes. Boxing has always lived in the unknown. And I mean, that is the total DNA of the sport right there. The entire foundation, everything that makes boxing what it is, relies on this fundamental idea that once the bell rings, once you step into that ring, no amount of planning, no strategy sessions or game plans can fully control what happens next.
We don't feel disrespecting them. In the Jake fights, for me to do that, I gotta be willing to walk away for good, and they gotta set me up for a while, at least not for life.
You have skill colliding with preparation, instinct firing against fear, momentum shifting in split seconds, and actual physical damage accumulating in real time. All these elements crash together in ways you cannot script. And that collision, that unpredictable chaos, is precisely what separates boxing from pure entertainment or theatrical performance.
he has had no real professional opponents other than Tommy Fury that were legitimate world-class boxers.
Yeah.
The problem is he was like a famous kid and then no one took him seriously.
When fans tune in to watch a fight, they are not just sitting there watching punches land and counting combinations. They are buying into risk. They are investing emotionally in the possibility that anything could happen. The risk is this unspoken contract that exists between fighters and the audience. This sacred agreement that what you are about to witness is real and uncontrolled. And when that contract gets questioned, when people start doubting whether what they are seeing is genuine, the entire structure of the sport begins to shake at its foundation. In recent years, crossover boxing has pushed that contract to its absolute limits, and we are seeing the consequences play out in real time. Influencers entering the ring brought massive attention, insane amounts of money, and a completely new audience that traditional boxing could never reach on its own.
You just will never be a good fighter, so I wish that I could have knocked him out at the start. But as we saw,
Me like sparring
Yeah.
when I watched it, which, you know, look, I paid for it. They got me. I thought it was going to be a real fight.
But here is what they also introduced, and this is crucial to understand. They brought something that boxing has always fundamentally resisted throughout its entire history, and that is narrative management. Fights began to feel less like genuine confrontations between two people trying to prove who is better, and more like episodes in a carefully planned series. You started seeing carefully chosen opponents who fit specific profiles, selective matchmaking that seemed designed to produce certain outcomes, promotional arcs that felt written rather than earned, and controlled outcomes that became part of the conversation, even if nobody officially acknowledged them out loud.
The Jake Paul fight didn't feel won, it felt delivered. 6 rounds like a deadline, 33 million live eyes like a quota, breathwork behind doors timed like ignition.
What was once just speculation on message boards and Reddit threads, conspiracy theories that hardcore fans would debate at 3 in the morning, started leaking into mainstream discussion on major sports networks and podcasts. And that shift, that movement from fringe theory to legitimate conversation, matters way more than any single fight result ever could. Joe Rogan's commentary didn't land like typical fight criticism, and that is exactly why it cut so deep and got so much attention. This wasn't about technique breakdowns or tactical analysis or judging whether someone's footwork was sloppy.
You guys need to fight guys your the same size. When you fought Floyd, you are massive. He did hit you with a fucking bomb and you fucking ate it. He's gonna fight Gervonta Davis. Who do you got? Gervonta, I think, hits way harder than Floyd, but
It struck directly at the psychology of combat and the entire culture surrounding it, the stuff that lives underneath the surface. When experienced fighters, who have been in that ring, who know what real violence feels like, speak calmly about things that feel off, people listen in a completely different way than when some random commentator complains. There is a weight to words that come from someone who understands sanctioned violence not as content for YouTube thumbnails, but as genuine consequence that can alter the course of someone's life. The tone wasn't outrage or wild accusation or trying to start drama for clicks. It was concerned, and concern, especially when it is sober and restrained like that, tends to expose uncomfortable truths more effectively than shouting or anger ever could. The core issue here isn't whether influencer fighters train hard or show physical courage. Because let's be honest, most of them do put in real work. Effort has never been the standard for legitimacy in boxing, and anyone who knows the sport understands this fundamental truth. The standard, the real measure of whether something counts, has always been the risk you face against someone who can truly take something from you in that ring. That includes your undefeated record, your physical health and long-term brain function, your future earning potential, and your sense of control over what happens when fists start flying. When fights are framed as business ventures first and sporting contests second, when the primary consideration is revenue and brand building rather than competition, the audience instinctively feels that imbalance even if they can't articulate exactly what is wrong. The suspicion doesn't come from hate or jealousy or wanting these guys to fail. It comes from pattern recognition, from seeing the same playbook run over and over until it becomes impossible to ignore. What really unsettled many observers, what made people genuinely uncomfortable, was the suggestion that outcomes, pacing during the fight, or even physical limits, could potentially be discussed behind closed doors before anyone ever enters the ring. Boxing has always had corruption narratives attached to it, like barnacles on a ship. That is nothing new in this sport's long and often ugly history. But those traditional corruption stories were usually tied to judges' scorecards being bought, promoters making backroom deals, or sanctioning bodies operating in shadows and taking bribes to manipulate rankings. What feels fundamentally different now, what makes this era unique and potentially more dangerous, is the openness of power and how brazenly it is being exercised. When social media influence becomes legitimate leverage in negotiations, and that leverage starts actively shaping what happens in the ring itself, the danger isn't just unfairness, or one fighter getting screwed over. The real danger is normalization, the process by which something outrageous becomes accepted. Once something becomes normal in people's minds, once it is just how things are done now, people stop questioning it entirely, even when it is actively eroding the core principles of the sport. Anthony Joshua's reaction, or really his lack of strong public reaction, became part of the story without him even needing to say much of anything at all. It just erodes over time, slowly and steadily, replaced by acceptance and resignation, until nobody even remembers what the sport used to stand for. The danger isn't one scripted fight, or one questionable outcome, or one suspicious performance. The real existential threat is the idea that scripting could be considered at all, that it could enter the conversation as a legitimate option rather than an absolute betrayal of everything boxing represents. Joe Rogan's perspective resonated so powerfully with so many people because it framed the issue as psychological warfare rather than just entertainment criticism or complaining about production value. Fighters are trained from day one to break opponents mentally, as much as physically, to get in their heads and make them doubt themselves. Introducing ambiguity about rules, expectations, or intentions behind the scenes destabilizes that entire psychological process. When a fighter believes the contest is pure, when they trust that it is a real fight with real stakes, they commit fully with everything they have, mentally and physically. But when doubt enters, when that little voice starts asking, "Wait, is this even real?" hesitation follows immediately, and hesitation in boxing gets you hurt.